Hey there, internet friends, and welcome to That D Plus Show. Class is in session for the only show from that nerdy site that lets you know what kind of quality to expect right from the name, and that is probably more true than ever for this episode today. I'm your host, Trevor Starkey, and each week I sit down with guests to talk about a Disney Plus offering of their choosing, or in this case, of my choosing. This show is made possible entirely by the support of our patrons over at patreon.com/thatnerdysite. If you like the show and you can support us over there, we would definitely appreciate it, but if you can't, no big deal. The fact that you're listening is awesome, and of course, we would love it if you like, subscribe, rate, review, and share the podcast with your friends. Joining me today, we have Cameron Abbott back on the show. How you doing, Cameron?
Trevor, first off, why did you make me watch this? And two, how dare you call this the spiritual successor to Darby O'Gill and the Little People?
I just thought it was for our conversation. So this episode is going to be all about Artemis Fowl.
Fowl is right.
And it is. Yeah, that's pretty much the headline that's making all the YouTube thumbnails and everything this week. So this is admittedly this was my choosing. We needed an episode for Tuesday, and so I was like, all right, let's see and I saw this had just come out and everybody was panning it, so I was like, all right, well, let's do an episode that chases that search engine optimization for once, and let's tackle Artemis Fowl. Let's see how bad is it really, and see how it fares in our context. And then the fact that it because I knew nothing about Artemis Fowl going into this, as I believe you did as well. Like, neither of us have read the book series or anything like that.
I thought the books were about bird. I'm not gonna lie. I
Yeah.
thought it was I thought there was these are like bird people world or something like that. That's the gist I got from what I can remember talking to an 8-year-old at the time when I was 16. So this is 14 years ago, and I'm like, what's this about? And the person tells me, and I'm thinking the entire time it's about birds. Because on the cover for the first book is a bird, and I'm like, well, this must be the main character. He's a bird. And I thought these were like bird people and stuff. And I'm like, I totally expected to be now to be in my fair. To be fair, I believe it's whatever that film is, the Guardians of Ga'Hoole, the owl movie came out just around that same time. So,
okay.
So I was charged thinking about birds in an anthropomorphic way.
Yeah.
So.
That's admitted one of the weird things that I think about when I think of this is the Spiderwick Chronicles or something like that.
Same era, yeah.
This is just another in the long running trend of young adult novels that have now been turned into movies and stuff.
That should never have been turned into movies. Spiderwick Chronicles allowed 100%. That was a good movie.
I don't think this shouldn't have been turned into a movie. I just think it should have been turned into a better movie. It might actually be a good predecessor for what will eventually be our John Carter conversation, given that this one was in development hell for many, many years.
That is true.
But yeah, it was Artemis Fowl. I knew nothing about the book series, and so I really knew nothing about the movie in general going into it. And so when immediately kicks off and they're talking about leprechauns and banshees and all Irish culture things, I was like, oh yeah, it's because I had tagged you about coming on and us doing this episode before watching it myself. And so it's just hey, it's fitting that the person who wanted to bring Darby O'Gill and the Little People onto that D Plus show in episode 3, I think, episode 2 or 3, I don't remember. It might have been 2, I guess. Whatever, one of our very early episodes being that movie, I was like, all right, well, at least we're going back to Irish culture stuff, so it's fitting that it's you and me again, Cameron, for this. But before we dive into what we really thought of Artemis Fowl in its entirety, a little bit of history lesson here. Originally released this last Friday, June 12th, 2020. Other notable releases of the time in this weird COVID era where movies that were originally going to get theatrical releases ended up going straight to digital platforms. You had Trolls World Tour, April 10th of 2020, and Scoob, May 15th of 2020, which you can find Jazz Foster's impressions of on our website. Not a full-fledged review, but as our resident Scooby-Doo expert and superfan, she had some significant thoughts on Scoob that I imagine would mirror somebody who loves the Artemis Fowl books and their thoughts on this film. Runtime of only an hour and 35 minutes, but I say that, and as somebody who has now watched it twice, just so I could go back in and take some extra notes for this episode, it it feels way longer than that. And then in the Disney live-action timeline of things, it was interesting and tricky because originally this was going to get a theatrical release. So I had it kind of placed here after Maleficent, Mistress of Evil, which had come out October 18th, 2019. But now that it's a Disney Plus only release, it also kind of falls in there after Stargirl, which came out on March 13th, 2020. And then in terms of like what's next, who knows, because I don't know when anything's going to get released in the future of the COVID world. But technically the next live action thing that's going to Disney Plus is the far superior Hamilton, coming out July 3rd, 2020. And that's one, again, I very much look forward to having a D Plus episode on that one. So we should definitely start putting some thoughts together about that in the coming weeks. Roll call of who's who in this film. So this is the first thing that jumped out at me. And I was like, having only seen like, oh, this is a bad movie. The first thing that comes up is directed by Kenneth Branagh. I was like, oh God, oh no, what? Like,
how?
Like he's not terrible. He's had some really good stuff out there. So how is this a Kenneth Branagh movie? Yeah. So Kenneth Branagh, his directorial debut had been Henry V back in 1989, and he's done, a half a dozen other Shakespeare films since then, including Much Ado About Nothing and Hamlet. And then he also, very famously did the first Thor film. And most recently he did Murder on the Orient Express and its upcoming sequel, Death on the Nile, whenever that ends up coming out.
Very excited.
Your writers for the film, Connor McPherson was one of the screenplay writers. Didn't have anything I recognize. He only had a handful of things in his IMDb credits. Hamish McCall also did the screenplay here. Previously had done Mr. Bean's Holiday, as well as Johnny English Reborn with Rowan Atkinson, and was one of the writers on Paddington, the first Paddington film. So
I think we can understand where the fault in this film lies.
I mean,
the man who helped write Paddington. Understood.
I mean,
big takeaway from this episode.
Yeah, Ben. You can have that fight with Ben. That's fine.
It's not a fight for me. It's an entertainment because I don't care.
Yeah. And then I have no idea how to pronounce his name. Ian. I'm going to say Ian Colfer. Based on the novel by he has written 9 Artemis Fowl books since 2001. And this was a little thing that I found interesting. He was handpicked by Douglas Adams' widow to add to the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy saga when he wrote And Another Thing in 2009. Hitchhiker's Guide, I think that was the 6th book in the saga. And the Hitchhiker's Guide, Douglas Adams' 5th book ended on a dour note and was always intended to continue, but he passed on before he could continue writing it. So his widow and the estate of Douglas Adams basically contracted the guy here behind the Artemis Fowl books to take that saga on to the next book. No idea how well that was received or not, but I thought that was kind of cool. In terms of who's in this film, you have Freddie Shaw here playing Artemis Fowl in his debut performance.
Tough luck, kid.
God bless the kid, but it also shows. You have Laura McDonnell playing Holly Short, who was in a few things: Love Rosie, Walk Invisible, The Bronte Sisters, and The Delinquent Season. None of which I had known, but she had more credits to her name than Artemis did, so I pulled those in here.
I will say she has some actually really brilliant moments.
Yeah, I really liked her in this.
Yeah, she was
she's one of the few little highlights in the film.
The kind of spark that she gives scenes that she's in is just absolutely delightful, especially when she's bouncing off of Judi Dench. And just the only the biggest issue against her character, her act, it's not even against her acting, her character is the writing and the sequence of events and how they happen, especially towards the end of the film, are weird. We'll get into that later.
You have Josh Gad here as Mulch Diggums, who was in, obviously, we talked about him a lot in our Frozen episode as well, because he was in Frozen, Beauty and the Beast. He was also in Murder in the Orient Express with Kenneth Branagh, and then Frozen 2, and he's also been doing the really cool Reunited Apart series of kind of bringing back casts of iconic film franchises together. I think as of recording, he's about to do, or he has already recorded it, but it has not gone live yet. But he's doing one for Ghostbusters, so that's exciting. So check out all that stuff.
I even heard he got a Ouija board installed, so Harold Ramis can be in it.
I had not heard that.
No, I'm making that up.
Okay. You have Nonso Anozie playing Domovoy Butler, who was Zaro Joan Daxos in Game of Thrones. And I was like, like when I looked at his IMDb, I was like, that's what I remember him from. From that, like one of the early rougher seasons of Game of Thrones before the later rougher seasons of Game of Thrones. He also worked with Kenneth Branagh on a couple films that I had not listed under Kenneth Branagh stuff: Jack Ryan's Shadow Recruit and Cinderella, both of which Kenneth Branagh had directed. Tamara Smart plays his daughter or his cousin or whatever,
niece,
like Juliet,
niece,
the niece Juliet, the little girl Butler, Juliet Butler. She of the kids had the most acting credits to her name, including a few seasons as in The Worst Witch, some TV series, I'm guessing in the UK, as well as the Are You Afraid of the Dark 2019 miniseries, which I remember hearing about for many, many years, and I didn't know that it had actually finally come out.
I saw the pilot. I don't know if the rest of it came out.
It's 3 episodes.
Yeah.
It was
okay, then
three
yes.
things.
Then yeah, it's all come out, I believe. No, she's actually quite fantastic in it.
Cool.
In that, it's unfortunate that she does so little in this film.
Yeah. That speaks to, I think, some of the issues of this film is that like it's doing that thing that too many films these days do of like, hey, this is going to set up the whole franchise, so we're going to introduce things here that aren't going to really be big in this movie, and they're probably not even necessary in this movie, but we're going to put them in this movie so we don't have to spend time introducing them down the line in the movies we're never actually going to make. You have Nikesh Patel playing Chief Tech Officer Foley, who is in London Has Fallen. I really only pulled him in here because I thought it was interesting. He was one of the voices in Forza Horizon 4, as well as he's in Four Weddings and a Funeral, the TV series, which I feel like I've seen a lot of commercials for because I think that's an Amazon Prime series. So as I've been watching Chuck, I think I saw repeated trailers for that and him in it. And then, yeah, as you touched on earlier, Judi Dench in here is Commander Root, who IMDb credits all the way back to 1959, so going on 60 years here. God bless her. She was, of course, M in all of the Pierce Brosnan and many of the Daniel Craig Bond films. She was in Kenneth Branagh's Henry V, as well as Hamlet, and then also in his Murder in the Orient Express. And then most recently, she was in Cats. So she's not having the greatest run of things right now. But God bless Judi Dench.
She's getting work, man. Like, you can't blame
she's
her. She's
work.
getting work. And, like, like, here's the thing.
And she's doing interesting things in that work.
Like, as abominable as Cats is as a franchise and, like, as something that exists, she did it. She was part of that technological wave of, making people look like they had cat skin on top of their regular skin.
Yeah.
And erasing Jason Derulo's penis.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's a thing that happened. And then Colin Farrell playing Artemis Fowl Sr., who kind of made his early breakout start in films like American Outlaws. Probably rose most to prominence there in Daredevil, the Ben Affleck version, as Deadshot, I think, right?
Yes.
Bullseye.
Yeah, that's what it is. Deadshot's DC.
Yeah. As well as films like In Bruges, and then more recently, he was in Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them, Dumbo, and earlier this year he was in The Gentleman, and very fun in that. I really enjoyed him in The Gentleman. And then he is going to be Oswald Cobblepot in the upcoming The Batman film with was Matt Reeves is directing, right? Writing and directing that one, and that's Robert Pattinson as Batman himself. So yeah, that's your cast of this one. Some of the notable ones. A little bit of trivia. As I alluded to earlier, movie rights to this film were sold to Disney before the first book was published, meaning it took almost 2 decades for this film to get made. And the writer has often jokingly stated that the movie would be finished 2 years after he died. Colin Farrell's involvement was not announced until March of 2020, nearly a year and a half after the teaser trailer had launched, and 3 years after filming wrapped. So this has been pretty much done outside of CGI and whatever technological touch-ups and everything since 2017. What? And then Colin Farrell shot his scenes in 3 days, which also makes sense.
He's in 2 locations the entire film.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Pretty much. And then, like, lots of pictures of him elsewhere. In the Artemis Fowl novels, Domovoy Butler is described as Eurasian, a heritage that helps him blend in wherever Artemis's adventures take them. However, producer and director Kenneth Branagh says he always envisioned black actor Nonso Anozie in the role of Butler and cast him in that role. In a similar kind of cross-casting, Commander Root is a male character in the novels, but here female, as Dame Judi Dench. This version incorporates characteristics of Wing Commander Rain Vinyaya, a female elf and ally of Artemis and Holly. Growing up, one of Kenneth Branagh's favorite family films was Chitty Chitty Bang Bang, and he used that as a template for Artemis Fowl. I admittedly have only seen Chitty Chitty Bang Bang like once or twice. I did not draw any parallels between those two things, but I certainly don't know Chitty Chitty Bang Bang well enough to...
Does Kenneth Branagh know the definition of a template?
I don't. I have no idea. And then,
also, you're Kenneth Branagh. Don't use a template. Make your own thing. Jeez.
Yeah. Well, he's already an adaptation of a book, so it's not it's not a new thing anyway. But lastly, this film is majorly based on the first novel, Artemis Fowl, where Artemis encounters fairies for the first time, but it also incorporates elements from the second novel, The Arctic Incidents, in which Artemis launches a rescue mission to save his kidnapped father. So, what did we think of Artemis Fowl, Cameron?
I should have saved it. I should have saved the joke for now. Fowl sounds about right? Like it's just not a. Let's go ahead and start top to bottom. Structure of the film, not great. Bounces a lot of places really quickly, very fast. It never seems to let anything breathe. It never seems to let anything have a moment of like settling in. 3, I would say, like the next thing I would say is that the chemistry between some of the actors is just non-existent.
Mm-hmm.
And important.
So real quick, I want to go.
Yeah, go ahead.
I want to go back to one of the ones you already touched on.
It's not good.
So like
that's my summary.
There's that. So the framing, where like most of this film is basically being relayed to us through Josh Gad's narrator character.
Oh yeah, bad idea too, because his voice, fine for the character, but as a narrator, oof.
Honestly, I didn't have too many issues with Josh Gad's performance. I appreciate that he's like being more gravelly and like as opposed to his more wacky kind of Olaf voice.
You're just glad he wasn't Olaf, right? Like that's
yeah, pretty much. Because if it was Olaf narrating this whole thing, that would have been significantly more grating. But especially on a second watch, and as I just started to think about this more, one of the things that is like really troublesome is that he gives you all of the backstory of like Artemis's like childhood and upbringing and everything, and he theoretically doesn't know exactly.
He's known the guy for 20 minutes. Artemis, like that's it.
Yeah. So it's like none of that makes sense in terms of how like he is being framed as the narrator of this story. Like he knows details he shouldn't have any kind of knowledge of, and so it's just like. What?
really deep details that like you wouldn't just get from meeting a person or even spending a day with them. Like you have to like know this person to like know the idiosyncrasies of a lot of the stuff that he's saying as a narrator.
Yeah.
And unless he's just been perving on like little Artemis Fowl for years, like it doesn't make much sense.
Yeah. Like
Where were you
one of
digging? Where
my
were you digging when you got busted? And how did you come? You got that many years. What's going
yeah.
on there? Huh?
Yeah. Like basically like we get so many exposition dumps in the first 10, 15 minutes of the film that feel unnecessary in many cases. One of the things one of my first notes that I took the second time watching through was when we're introduced to Artemis, we're introduced to him surfing.
Yep.
And it is like the parallel I made is the CGI, and I thought this the first time through, but I found a way to frame it the second time watching it, was the CG looks so bad because his face is just like put on a surfer. It looks like somebody at Jib Jab had surfing footage and then a picture of Artemis Fowl.
Did you see who
And
did
just
the
kind of
special
like
effects for this? Was it Jib Jab? Did Jib Jab get contracted out for
I,
this film?
I did not, but that was what it looked like, and I was just like, what? Like, why does this even matter? Why are we being introduced to him with a surfing sequence? Like, none of that comes into play. It doesn't matter at all that he is out there surfing. Has nothing to do with him in the rest of this
And
film.
it's not like the actor
I
himself.
don't know why it needed.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I don't know why any of that was necessary. But then, like, while all that is being like portrayed, yeah, my like the in the same note, I'm like, and also, how does Mulch know all of this stuff about Artemis that he's portraying or that he's relaying? Which, again, in the first time you're watching it, you don't know that he doesn't really know Artemis. But especially like watching it back a second time, it's like he should not know any of these things about like his childhood and his upbringing and beating like a Russian player of chess at age 7 or something. It's like that clearly does not come up in the time that they're in the Foul Manor together. What is it? None of this makes sense. Oh my god. Yeah. It's like exposition for exposition's sake that has no bearing on the rest of the story outside of letting us know that Artemis is a kid that does not have other friends, and it is because he is so smart. Basically, it's like, okay, that's whatever.
It would be a great way to introduce him without worrying about exposition. Instead of having that weird narration scene, just have it be from like the counselor when he says, "I read your file."
Yeah,
like he could have. I mean,
that's what I'm saying. Is like we got like not only we get an exposition dump within an exposition dump. Ugh. Anyway,
it's bad.
Other issues that you had with this, or
sure.
Other thoughts you had.
I'll summarize it by just saying this: this film has almost every element that you need to make a good film out of the source material, out of what you have here. What has been cobbled together into a film is not good. Kenneth Branagh is a talented director. He's very insightful on understanding how to capture really good character moments. Say what you want about Thor, about how whether it was not the most entertaining, he literally took an approach to the Thor mythos. And I think the biggest thing that you'll always be able to kind of give credit to is Branagh and the development team for Thor took the concept of a rainbow bridge, a bridge made of rainbows, and turned it into something that wasn't just from Care Bears. They literally did something very unique and genius in that. And he has really great moments of insight in directing and creating moments and scenes. The entire idea and concept of Loki as we know him in the films and how it differs comes from Kenneth Branagh working with Tom Hiddleston at the very get-go about telling Tom Hiddleston, I need you to lose weight, I need you to look hungry, because that kind of these ideas and concepts that he does. He's a really talented director. This cast is actually has really great actors in it. Even the actor who plays Artemis isn't necessarily terrible. It's just the way that this film is edited, the way that it's presented in a way that makes it it's bad editing. Really, that's the core principle of what's wrong with this film is whoever decided on the sequence of events of the editing process, especially towards the end of the film where I feel like they repeat scenes, even though they're not technically repeating the scene.
Hmm.
The weird "do you trust me" scenes between the two main characters, at the different points of the and the end of the film, are disjointed and feel out of place from the rest of the that entire end sequence.
Yeah, in that same vein, there's a lot of artificially drawn out tension,
Hmm.
both with the fake out death of Butler, as well, and then again like 10 minutes later or whatever when they don't know that they got the dad back or not,
And
where it's
they
like
walk through the house in the weirdest sequence of events of why would you walk through the house this way?
yeah. So it's like
Yeah.
so some of that tension is just like, okay, yeah, none of this needed to be as drawn out as it was. Obviously, like one of the things we have to keep in mind is that this is clearly not a movie geared towards us.
Nope.
It is very clearly a movie aimed towards 10-year-olds or something like that. So it's like I don't want to feel like we're dogpiling on this, especially given
Our conversation before.
the conversations off air of dogpiling and stuff that you and I were just having. But and I pointed out or alluded to the fact that I didn't think the kid playing Artemis is a good actor. I can't say one way or another. I don't think he is doing a lot with the character, but that might have been all that he was asked to do with the character. I think Artemis, at least as portrayed in this film, is a very boring one note. Okay, I'm smarter than everybody, so he doesn't have anything to learn in this, and that makes for not a compelling character there's no stakes to his journey in
There's no
this.
challenge that he has to overcome.
Yeah,
Yeah, everything
he
about him feels like they throw a troll in at the end of the film, and even then you never get the instance that oh no, they've thrown a troll in, my plan is ruined.
yeah,
It's never anything like that. It just which makes it feel like less that he's planned it and more the plot has geared itself towards telling us that this is what he's planned. There's that problem with it is that Artemis
yeah.
is not really a character. He is the central plot device and does not ever differentiate himself from the plot or this narration that's happening.
Yeah. Um, there's an element brought up early on that I'm like, I honestly don't know why this is relevant. That like when the dad gets kidnapped off the yacht or whatever, suddenly like the world knows that he's been like stealing artifacts, and I'm like, A,
Yeah, how did
why
that
does the
work?
world suddenly know that? And B, why is that important at all? And like that never gets resolved. And there are just like so many things like that. I'm just like, you're introducing a thing that I don't know why you introduce it. I don't know what it adds to the story, and I don't know where it's being added from. And again, like so much of this becomes even more apparent. Like I honestly, when I was going through a second time watching it, I felt like I was writing for CinemaSins, and I've definitely like moved away from wanting to like consume that snarky level of content on this stuff. But it was just like it was just kind of flowing out of me. So I guarantee they're gonna have a field day when they eventually do this one. Because yeah, there's just like so many like the idea that there is a device in this world that freezes time either inside a bubble or outside a bubble, so it freezes the entire rest of the world. I'm like, how does that not just break your universe? Like, why in fact in the second time that device gets relayed, why did they not just throw it inside the bubble and freeze Artemis and then just take the girl out, take Holly and take her home? Like, why did they, for that instance, decide to freeze the whole rest of the world? Oh, it's just so that for plot's sake they can have a showdown action scene in the manor and destroy the manor with the troll and all that stuff. It's like none of it. Like, why none of it? Internal logic of this of the story just hurts. And yeah, there's that. Also, the fact that the cage that they put Holly in has a little like slit for the door that they talk through, but the entire rest of the cage is chicken wire and like open like wood, and it's like, why is that a slit? Why does that matter when they can just talk directly outside of. I don't understand the design choices they made in this movie, and it hurts. It hurts my head so much. Just gets me angry and grumpy. Anything else you want to rag on, Cam?
One final thing I'll rag on is actually no. I think I've said it all. I know that there were some people who were upset about the casting of. Sorry, I'm trying to think of his name here.
Josh Gad, Colin Farrell.
Nonzo
Oh,
Anozie.
okay.
I thought he was like totally fine.
Yeah.
Like as far as like his casting choice, I saw some people I saw some stuff about like people writing saying that making him part of like the butlers or like the servant of the family and like their family has been for generations gives off a not totally great connotation like in the 2020 landscape that we're in.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
but I felt like it felt more like, and this is a kind of a like I never understood like what his actual like I understand what his station is, like what his character is supposed to be doing, but I never understood like the emotional like Artemis when he is dying, Artemis acts like it's just there's an inconsistency with character relations and positions as far as like how characters are supposed to interact with each other. Like there's that awesome scene, like it's actually a really cool scene where Artemis and Dom walk out of the front door. They're both dressed to the nines, and like they have that like the weapons with them,
Mm-hmm.
and they're slinging them around, and it's very clear like this is definitely like the master and Dom with his apprentice, like his the person he's been training, Artemis, and they're doing this awesome like entirely awesome choreographed sequence, and it's great. But like, okay, and then at another point in time, like I never understood the. I understood it. I just never it never emotionally connected for me what these two characters are supposed to mean to each other.
Yeah, I feel like it clearly wants to like bank off of the like Alfred Bruce Wayne dynamic relationship kind of thing, but it doesn't feel earned.
Yeah, and that's something I think
And
it just they never leave the two alone long enough.
yeah, and when they like all we see of the two of them is just like they're completely stoic, almost one note characters. So we don't see any kind of like emotional connection between them until he's dying, and then it's just like it feels unearned because it feels it's being forced. It feels like, well, yeah, maybe he's been a very present force and figure in your life, but we haven't seen that. So like, and especially the fact that it just gets undercut, a minute later when Holly goes and heals him. It's just like, okay, well, yeah, I
Not
don't
even
know
a full minute,
what.
man. Not even a full minute.
Oh yeah, yeah, I know. I'm being
Oh
generous.
yeah.
Um,
Like here's the thing. There's an entire scene where they're like, we should turn the magic back on so we can like Holly can like. It's like first off, how do you guys know what Holly's situation is? You don't. And
yeah. Oh
also
yeah.
the second thing is like it would have been a way better if Holly had run out and they'd be like, oh Holly, you're safe, and she's like, you need to give me my like turn the magic back on. I need to like
Yeah.
help somebody. I need to save them. Like there was this entire point earlier where she like broke the rule by using her magic to heal that little girl who'd been like crushed by the troll, and that would be an important moment for her character to like show like to have the rest of her team like back her like the way they kind of wanted to show it this way. Like captain, I made you a captain for a reason, like to make that decision, etc. Like you could have done that better. Like it's that was just such
Yeah.
problems I have with this film are numerous, and my yeah, we'll get to the conclusion of how we feel about it at the end. But anyway, enough
Yeah.
dogging on this film. Although I will say
I
there are some really good highlight moments for me.
okay. So real quick, just one more. I guess in general, I'm curious your thoughts on Josh Gad once he reveals how dwarfs dig in this world. Because that was another moment where I was just like, oh my god, what? Where he like stretches out his jaw, then goes digging, and we see dirt coming out of his basically his heart boxers, and it's just like what just what am I what is happening?
Are you asking me
What is
how I
this?
felt about dwarves in this universe, like unhinging their jaws to like stretching it down in like some of the weirdest CG I've ever seen in my life,
Yeah.
to then like place their mouth on the ground and start chomping, and then immediately having like just
Yeah,
raw
the dirt
dirt
just immediately passes
through
straight through
you,
you, and you just
and
shit it out, fart it out, I don't
it
whatever.
just like
It
you're
just clearly comes right out your ass.
like the fart box opens and out comes nothing but dirt, like into people's faces and stuff. Like, how do I feel about that? Weird. I feel weird about it. It's weird. It doesn't like it's just it's gross and it's weird, but at the same time, like I think it's kind of funny, but not funny enough that like there should be that much
Yeah.
that there should be that much focus on like the stuff coming out of his butt.
Yeah.
I didn't need to see that raw that raw rock and dirt fly straight through his colon right into the face of like the leprechauns. Like I didn't need that, man.
Yeah. So yeah, let's talk about highlights if we have any. It sounds like you have at least one or two. Hit me with a highlight of yours. Any favorite moments from this film? After we've definitely gone over many of our least favorite moments.
Yeah, so I think like my most favorite stuff that I saw out of it is I'm really curious to how Lara McDonnell is going to be like what she's going to do after this. She played Holly Short in this. She was just
Lana McDonald,
Lana McDonnell,
I think, or
Lara
is
McDonnell.
it Laura? Scrolling all the way back up. Laura McDonnell. Yeah,
Yeah, so
you're
I'm
right.
really curious to see what she does going forward. I thought she was just a standout in this film. Her interactions with Judi Dench were just outstanding. Her like her big hero moments in that like at that town are were wonderful. Like they were big superhero feeling like moments. She was great in that. Um, just there's a lot about her like her acting, and that made me feel like I believed what she was doing. And which I mean is quintessential for her craft. But I really look forward to seeing what she does in the future.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think, I mean, we get introduced to her, and she gets the benefit of getting to immediately play off of Josh Gad, who is, as for whatever else he is like a fun presence, and they have a good back and forth dynamic, and that I think that does a great job kind of helping establish her character throughout this, especially because yeah, when her scene partner becomes Artemis later, and he just because of how stoic he's being portrayed isn't really giving her too much to work off of. She is doing a lot of the heavy lifting there, and I think she does a good job of doing that without feeling like she's exerting more than she needs to or anything like that. She still feels natural within the context of everything, and then yeah, I think she has some fun off of Judi Dench, like you kind of touched on as well. So yeah, I definitely thought she was a good standout performance as well. Anything else?
Yeah, a couple other things. Nikish Patel, even though he had like his stuff was more based off of like humor, did a great job.
Mm-hmm.
I actually really liked his performance. Colin Farrell, as like much as he's in this film, pretty dang good. He's a great actor. You
Yep.
kind of you kind of expect that out of him, especially just like where he's at in his career and kind of like what he has under his belt. This is like the fact that he did this in 3 days. I'm not surprised. Both because of some editing choices at the end of the film, but also in a big more like a priority in my feelings on like his interactions with Artemis felt good. They felt joyful. They felt like those are the moments where you see like what I actually feel like you see a lot of Ferdia Shaw's actual acting and like what he's able to actually do because he's not having to be stoic like you mentioned. I'm thinking back to like those moments that he has with his dad when they're in character and they're talking about all the folklore and mythology and
Yep.
all the stuff about that and kind of like the impact. And the great thing is because of how good Colin Farrell is when he's missing from the film and he's been kidnapped, because of the emotions that he's able to portray with Artemis at the beginning of the film, the lack of those makes you feel like okay, there is like an actual loss here. Artemis is really close with his dad. Like, I do feel that way about it. And it's because of what they set up there, but then, the rest of the film is what it is. But so last shout out really is for that, and also for Josh Gad for being just a fantastic actor to be willing to do these like just absolute nuts. So like you'd think after being Olaf, he'd be like, oh, I don't want to be typecasted as like the kind of like side character who's really goofy and has weird body things, and it's like nope, he's embraced it, and it's like cool, man.
Yeah, I mean, like the whole premise of a gigantic dwarf,
Hilarious.
I enjoyed,
Yeah.
and I thought he was like excellently cast in that role.
Dwarficus
I don't know.
Giganticus.
Again,
Great.
yeah, and again, that's I don't know how true to the actual source material that like concept and that idea is, but he was a ton of fun in it. So I think he was. I think him and the girl, the actress playing Holly Short, I think were my favorite elements of the film. I do think there was a lot just a lot of stuff that was like introduced to be set up for future films, and like I don't think you're ever going to get those future films, but good luck with that. Especially if this was shot and finished being shot 3 years ago. By the time we get our next adventures with Artemis, he's going to already have gone through puberty, and it's going to be an awkward look.
Maybe he might have some really good acting chops by then. We don't know.
Maybe, yeah. Maybe that's what that's all he's working on during quarantine. Who knows? Again, I feel bad
I don't want to bash
ragging on a kid. I'm a dick.
Like here's the thing, I don't think we've ragged on him so much as we've made it very clear that when you're that young of an actor, if you don't have like an innate natural talent or you don't have the experience of being on a lot of sets, this is your debut role. Like this is a hard. Like I always hate it when you have these, debut roles for these young actors or actresses, because it's like you're asking them to do so much in leading a film.
Like
they just do not have the knowledge and prep work for. And if you don't it doesn't nail it out of the park, that's such a huge dent to what they could possibly become later on.
Yeah, if we never got Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets, nobody would know who Daniel Radcliffe and Emma Watson and Rupert Grint were. Like they would have just completely fallen into obscurity after only that first film, where it's pretty much all of their first things. And it again, some of it falls absolutely on the director, especially in cases like this, where it's like if the performance that he gives in this is all that Kenneth Branagh was asking for of him, then I feel like Kenneth Branagh was slacking. And he can very easily get good performances out of people, and he just didn't hear, in my opinion.
And it might also be a fact, it might also be a factor of things like producers or other things like that. So, sure, but at the end of the day, it really does come down to Kenneth Branagh. And here's the thing: Kenneth Branagh is not perfect. He made Hamlet. Kenneth Branagh's Hamlet is atrocious. It is horrible. It is creepy, weird, and gross. Not a fan of it at all. But he also made, Much Ado About Nothing, which I think is actually really good. Or, he also, he was King Henry V. Mm-hmm. He's. So I'm also saying he can be hit and miss sometimes, and who knows? Maybe he just didn't gel with this kid. Maybe things he found on set things got harder or difficult, or who knows what could have caused a number of issues here. This film was made 3 years ago. Who knows what happened? But it also kind of sucks, because maybe it's because it's Kenneth Branagh's cool, we're gonna have a lot of this cool stuff happen in post production, and maybe it didn't. There's no real way to know until people actually want to go deep on this film, which fortunately and unfortunately I doubt.
Who knows
people
we'll get
will.
any of that.
Yeah, I don't think this will be they're setting stuff up for a future because this is part of a franchise. One, I think that they should be thanking Disney should be thanking their lucky stars that COVID-19 forced this to go into Disney Plus.
I mean, yeah, this definitely would have been a very notable box office bomb, I imagine. This would have been Doolittle levels of bad.
I agree.
If it had actually released theatrically this year. And that's unfortunate, because I have no doubt that this is a beloved young adult series. Obviously, there are 9 books in the series, ranging from 2001, I believe, all the way through last year. I think is when the most recent installment has come out. So clearly, there's like an audience for these kinds of films. But much like with when we talked about Percy Jackson a while back on this show with Jazz, if they don't nail it, it's gonna like cut out the legs from under it. And so it is the kind of thing of like, hey, maybe nowadays they'll completely scrap this and basically just restart and do like an Artemis Fowl Disney Plus series, in 2 or 3 years time, and that's where they'll try and like find a new approach for this that isn't trying to make a big budget movie. I think that's one of the interesting things we get from streaming services like this in general is a new avenue for putting this kind of stuff out. Obviously, we saw on the HBO Max side of things, Warner Brothers probably never would have invested the money into a theatrical release of a Snyder Cut kind of thing, but as an enticing factor into a streaming platform, yeah, they can put some money into it to put it out there and make it a big selling point and a big draw of the monthly service that they want to sell people to get, revenue coming in, not just once, but, for monthly for as long as people remember to, or don't remember to unsubscribe or whatever. So yeah, I think maybe that's where a better option for this would have been as opposed to this film, especially because I don't know how the rest of the stories go, but if it's 9 books and they're not going, like, if at the end of those 9 books Artemis isn't 28 or something like that, he certainly would have been by the time the 9th movie had come out. So yeah, tough to do. Any other last kind of moments or closing thoughts you want to touch on before we dive into grading this one?
No, I think we've said enough.
Yeah. So yeah, report card, grade it from A+ to F. Where do you fall on this one, Cam?
The more I've thought about it over the course, I watched it this morning. The more I've thought about it since I watched it, the further and further it's slunk down. I have to say, there are moments of this film that are absolute highlight and joy, but they are so few. So few. When I say few, I mean there's 3 in this film. That is just honestly, I mean D. It's a D for me.
Yeah.
It's just a D. You can be it's not an F. It doesn't fail. It succeeds in being a movie. It cobbles
Yes.
itself together and it crosses the finish line to qualify for a D, in my opinion. It gets to that point and or a D- rather. And then those few really nice moments and also some really great characters and actors in this film do push it over to that D, solid D mark. But do not push your luck. This film, just do not push your luck. You're not getting past that.
Yeah, watching it a second time, I kind of fall pretty much exactly with you in terms of the rationale, but I guess I started at a D, and those few little highlights get it up to the titular D+ of this show. So that's where I'm going to end up landing on it. It is a D+ from me. Because we didn't talk about her a lot, but I think Judi Dench absolutely is playing a weird little character here, but she is all in on the character she's playing and having that raspy voice kind of thing, and I think I took a note in there because one of the dumbest lines in the movie is when she comes off the ship and just says "top of the morning."
So
What is
good.
talking to nobody?
So good. It's so good.
It's such a dumb
that
line.
is a great moment for me. I love that moment.
But it's just she has fun with it, so fine, whatever. And yeah, I just D+ from me. Extra credit, other suggestions. If you do happen to like this, you have A Wrinkle in Time, which I liked significantly better than this. I think I think that film has its issues too, but I think is a better film than this one. Absolutely. You have The Chronicles of Narnia: The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. You have the live-action Alice in Wonderland. You have Onward, which we've done an episode of this show on. You have Percy Jackson and the Olympians, the Lightning Thief, which we've done an episode of this show on. You have Timmy, Failure, Mistakes Were Made, whatever that is. You have the BFG, Big Friendly Giant, which I've not seen that, but I remember reading that book in elementary school. And so I remember when they were making the movie on it, I was like, oh, that's interesting. And then just never heard anything good about the movie, so never sat down and watched it. So the fact that it's being promoted here alongside this one probably says all I need to know about it. And then lastly, Pirates of the Caribbean on Stranger Tides, which again, that's a weird one of the Pirates of the Caribbean ones to pick, given that one is often touted as like the weakest of the bunch.
No, number 3 is the weakest of the bunch.
I don't know. Like number 3 at least still has Elizabeth Swann, Will Turner, and stuff. On Stranger Tides is the one that like completely tries to come up with like a new cast of like ingenues and stuff, and just does nothing with them.
Nothing. Excuse me. Sorry, I'm skipping on his name right now, but the actor who plays Blackbeard in that film, are you kidding me?
Oh, Ian McShane.
Ian McShane's phenomenal in it.
I'm saying the ingenues, the Will Turner and Elizabeth Swann
people come to
type
see.
characters.
Gotcha, okay.
You
get those. You get those in The Priest and the Mermaid, which is like actually like a hot and awesome romance subplot that's in that film. It's great.
No, they were terrible.
When he puts
that's what I'm saying.
Puts the
I'm saying
Bible
they
in
were
the
terrible.
lid to keep it open for her, like, dude, come on. Like that Bible actually saves somebody.
On Stranger's Tides was terrible. That's what I'm saying. Like Ian McShane doesn't save it. Jeffrey Rush doesn't save it.
Like his sword, he like moves around the hilt with his fingers, and like the ship comes alive. Like it's awesome. It's so good, man.
No.
It's way better than like the dumb maelstrom. Oh, we're gonna go around in a circle. Oh. Get out of here.
No. Extracurriculars. You watching anything else on Disney Plus these days, Cam?
No, actually, right now I'm not. I'm like catching up with some other stuff right now in my life. But if I was, I would be watching Clone Wars and DuckTales and other things that I've mentioned before that people should definitely watch. So.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, I admittedly am not watching too much on that on Disney Plus right now either. We've talked about on That Nerdy Site show over the last few weeks. I fell into Avatar: The Last Airbender and really enjoyed that series, and I've started watching The Legend of Korra now. But neither of those are Disney Plus offerings, so don't need to delve into them too deeply here. But that's going to do it for this episode of That D Plus Show. Thank you, Cameron, for bearing with me to sit down and actually talk about Artemis Fowl. I'm sorry that I made you waste 90 minutes of your life watching that and then another hour here talking to me about it. But hopefully you can then go on with your life and never think about it again moving forward. You can follow Cameron at Rev Cabot. 2 B's, 2 T's. Anything you want to give a shout out to, Cam?
No.
Okay. You can follow me at Trevor J. Starkey. I will give a shout out to this week's That Nerdy Site show with Cameron and myself and Frank. You can watch that. And you can follow all of us on That Nerdy Site. Or go to thatnerdysite.com. If you want to be part of this show, you can go to thatnerdysite.com/D+guest. Let us know what you would want to talk about by filling out the form there. And hopefully I will get back to you and get you on the show at some point in time. If you liked what you heard, please like, rate, review, subscribe, share the podcast with your friends, all that fun stuff. And if you do feel so inclined, you can always support us on Patreon at patreon.com/thatnerdysite. Thank you for joining us. As always, stay nerdy, be good to each other, and class dismissed.